oppose our will. And this is one of the things that as city employees sometimes we do. We operate within rules and laws, and we have confines on the resources and the things that we can do. And sometimes we use those things as weapons, as opposed to using them for tools for good. And oftentimes, so we'll tell people what we cannot do and what we will not do because of our confines. However, there are ways that we can use those confines to help them come up with a new objective or a new goal. And so my job as a helper is not to solve people's problem, but to give them information that they can now make new decisions and set new goals for themselves. I cannot do this. However, if you talk to so-and-so, they might be able to help you with something. Or I cannot do this right now, but if you come back at a different time, we might be able to work something out. All right? So sometimes as bureaucrats, we use those policies and procedures as weapons as opposed to tools for actually helping and benefiting change. All right? So what is diversity? Diversity simply is dignity and honor of being human. What does the word dignity mean? What is dignity? What's dignity? To be dignified. Proud. To be proud. To be what? Holding your head up high. Dignity. Is dignity something that you have or something that you give? It is, in fact, both, right? So you can give dignity and you can also have it. Now, the interesting thing about dignity is if you don't give individuals dignity, they'll try to take it. I don't know if this happens in St. Peter's, but it certainly in St. Peter, but it certainly happens in the cities. And I'll be at a stoplight or at a stop sign, and there's a tribe of teenagers who are trying to cross the street. And I don't know why it takes them so long to cross the street. And I used to think it was because their pants were hanging too low, but I've seen them pull those suckers up and, get moving when they need to do something, right? But one of the things that I noticed is that as they're crossing my vehicle, one of them makes eyeball-to-eyeball contact with me, as if to say, your kind of people, adults, don't ever see me any other time, but you will see me and recognize me now. What they fail to realize is I have no points on my license and very good car insurance. Right? But they're trying to get that dignity and honor in that particular time and in that particular space. All right? So what is honor? What's honor?
Respect.
It's respect. All right? How is honor different than respect? You go into a courtroom, you give the judge respect. Or you give him... She said attitude. Or you give him honor, right? So honor is respect at a high level. Who have we said as a society we will give high levels of respect to? To the military, men and women who serve, who fight on our behalf, right? We said we'll give it to our parents and our grandparents, our elders, that we'll give them honor, that we'll give leaders honor, all right? And then next, being. So diversity is dignity and honor and being human. Please raise your hand if you can answer yes to these next two questions. First, raise your hand if you purchased a ticket or you passed the test that made you eligible to be born on this planet. Good. None of us has done anything to bring ourselves here. All we did was respond to an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. It's disgusting. But we all accepted an invitation to be here, and we're trying to figure it out. And lastly, I was looking for a definition for the word human, and I was very surprised by what I found. I found that human has two definitions. The first of which is a noun. that talks about being a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. All right? Human. But human is also a what? An adjective. And what do adjectives do? They describe the noun. All right? And so, what is it that we teach the smallest of our humans, our babies, our nieces, our nephews, our sisters and brothers? What if we tried to teach them about what it means to be human? That what? What do we teach them? We teach them about forgiveness. You can make a mistake and be forgiven for that mistake. What else? What, what's that?
Kind and caring.
To be kind and caring. What else do we teach them?
Rules of life and society.
Rules of life and society. All right? One more. One more thing that we teach them. What's that?
Respect.
We teach them respect. Right? And typically what happens when we go to this place, we talk about dignity, honor, and being human, and we teach our young people all of these things, we get to this place called respect. And the thing I think is very interesting about respect is that oftentimes, particularly adults, will say, you have to, what with my respect? Earn my respect. How many people have ever heard someone say that? You have to earn my respect. I have to tell you, that's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life. You can never earn respect. I was a little guy in my dad's church, and there was a young lady that I was smitten for. And I think I was 9 and she was 14, right? I like older women. And so I would do anything I could to get next to Ruthie. That was her name. And so one day I went up to Ruthie, and she was like, Andre, if you like me, you will do A, B, and C. And being the kid that I was, and I wanted to please her, what do you think I did? I did A, B, and C. And once I had accomplished that task, I went back to her panting. And she said, Andre, if you really, really like me, you'll do X, Y, Z. So what do you think I did?
XYZ.
I did X, Y, Z. I completed that task. I came back panting some more. She said, Andre, if you really, really like me, you will do 1, 2, 3. And guess what I did? I ran. Because it became very obvious that what? No matter what it was that I did, I was not going to reach the level of infatuation in her eyes that I wanted. I wasn't going to get to that level. I wasn't going to have that connection that I wanted to have. And all too often when we talk about, this concept of respect, it's a moving target. How do I know that I've done enough to earn an individual's respect? And it was really difficult when I taught high school, because I talked to my kids about respect, and I talked to them about, this thing, and then we go out into the community and we do, surveys, or we do service projects. And guess how the community treated my kids? With disrespect. So everything that I did to brain them up and to get them, prepared to go out to the world was undone by the fact that people were disrespectful to my kids who were struggling and trying to be respectful. And so I came to the realization that we can never earn someone's respect. But the only way to get respect, and this was the only way that I could get my kids to go back out there and do this and interact with the world in a positive way, was to tell them that the only way to get respect is to give it. And the funny thing about giving respect is that it's not authentic respect until you give it to people who do not deserve it. Because is it easy to respect someone who's being respectful to you? Yeah. But when the rubber meets the road, when you want to test your intestinal fortitude, you got to have a battle. Risk, risk is one of those things that clarifies our purpose. It clarifies our goals. It clarifies who we are. And if we don't ever put some skin in the game, we'll never know what we're made of. All right? And so respect goes beyond that. One of the things that, there are 5 reasons that we don't get respect. Because people say, do as I say, not as I do. People say you have to earn my respect. They say boys will be boys, or this is how the system has always been. Why should we change? Lastly, people say that's not my child, or that's not my responsibility. Somebody else will take care of it. And what do we know about that? Yeah. I don't want people pushing my elevator button because I might not get off on the right floor. Right? Lastly, that disrespect is a form of violence. Now, what happens when physical violence is enacted on an individual? What is the residue? What's left over? Pain, anger. What else? What?
Fear.
Fear. For me, resentment. Right? What happens when someone's been disrespected? What is the residue left over? One might argue that is exactly the same as when physical violence is enacted on an individual. All right? So that's respect. I want to get to the real meaty stuff. So I'm going to skip a bunch of some of these preliminary pieces. And so what I'd like to do now is I'm going to ask you to participate in an activity. I'm going to pass out these cards. And what I'd like for you to do is to talk about what it is that you learned growing up. And I want you to talk about it in some very specific kinds of ways. What I'd like for you to do is I want you to put a plus where you've learned something positive about a group of people. I want you to put a minus where you've learned something negative about a group of people. And I want you to put a 0 where you never had that conversation about a group of people. All right? So on the card that I'm going to give you are these categories. And so they're African Americans, European Americans, Latina Americans, Asian Americans, Disabled Americans, and Native Americans. I could have more categories. However, the card is very limited in its space. All right? But I think you'll get the concept. And so, from your parents and family, what did you learn about African Americans? Pluses, minuses, or zeros? Now, you can have pluses and minuses in the same box. But the size of your plus and the size of your minus tell us how much you learned. So, if you learned a lot of positives, then you'll have a big plus. If you have a little bit of negative, then you'll have a little minus. All right? Does that make sense? And you'll do that for each category. And for each of these educators, if you will. So what did TV and movies teach you about Asian Americans? And what did school and workplace teach you about disabled Americans? Or what conversation was had about that? All right? Positive, negatives, or zeros. Any questions before I pass out the cards?
Why do they have to be about American?
Because I don't have enough space on the card.
Yeah, but you've defined it as American, Asian American, Latino American. Why can't they just be Europeans, Latinos, Asian?
Yep. Because, contrary to popular belief, I didn't make these categories up. I'm using the categories that people have used. All right? So that's thank you for that question. Come back to that question when we get to the debriefing of this. All right? Cool. Thank you. So we can use second card. And so when I say growing up or grown up, however you want to define that is up to you. Did you?